Welcome to the second episode of the We Care Virtual Talk with Alice. On this episode, we have David Mwanza, who is a therapist, and we discuss men's mental health as he highlights some of the current statistics. Enjoy! Good afternoon, David. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you, Alice?
I'm good. Thank you for accepting my invitation and gracing me with your presence. I'm very excited to learn from you.
Excited. Thanks for the
invite. Okay. So for anyone who would want to know about you, I know a bit about you, but please just briefly introduce yourself and then we'll get right into the questions.
Okay, sure. So my name is David Mwanza. I'm a psychotherapist with Thrive Owners Hub, as well as a consultant, Arsenal fan, maize lover. Oh my goodness, I'm so many things. But yeah, I've been working in the field of therapy for the past 5 years now, helping with problems related to trauma, depression, substance use, anxiety, suicidal ideation, just to name a few. And yeah, I'm happy to be on the show today.
That's quite a broad intro, just based on your qualifications. I'm even just so excited to know that I'm actually talking to someone who's qualified in the field itself. Yeah, I'll go straight into the questions. The first question is, at a professional and personal level, what can you highlight to be the most common men's mental health issues in Zambia or just generally?
Oh, wow, that's a good question to start with. To be honest, from what we are seeing around us, what statistics are showing, men and addiction in various areas is one that's really ravaging a lot of people right now, a lot of men in this case. Addictions related to alcohol, addictions related to drugs, addictions related to something that's growing now, betting, addictions related to sex and gambling, and betting and gambling can go into the same pocket. And this has been a prevalent issue that's affecting men. And of course, one thing we talk about mental health issues is that they tend to overlap, right? So these addictions could be tied in with traumas that the men have experienced. These addictions could be tied into depression that the men have been facing, and so are trying to find some kind of escape, some kind of way to cope with the depressive symptoms that they're dealing with. And then it just becomes this cycle of going around the same mountain with the same problems and challenges.
Wow. I had a brief idea, but I didn't know that it was to that extent. And the thing that you've mentioned, it's seeming like most common issues are like a ripple effect of something else. Am I correct? Or did I miss the point?
Not in all cases, but yes, in most times, definitely. One thing leads to another. For sure.
So what it is people are looking for a way to escape, and then they end up going to something that actually affects their mental health.
There you go. And not only is it just an escape, sometimes, in life, a lack of purpose, a lack of drive kind of helps us get involved in vices that end up derailing our life or causing dysfunction. And that's something key to know when you're talking about mental health. So mental health is a state of awareness, right? Where you're able to make effective decisions and you're also able to contribute to the community or society. Mental challenges come when we are struggling to make effective decisions, we're struggling to be self-aware, and as a result, we are not making significant contributions to our community or society. And so, as we've seen happening around us, the impact of addiction in men, women as well, is its effects now on someone's functionality in their various roles as a husband, as a CEO, as a businessman, as a brother, as a father, is affected. And that dysfunctionality always gives us a flag to say there's some kind of mental health challenge, because most times we just think of the more severe cases. If I'm not locked up, if I'm not talking to myself, I'm okay. But that only talks about a small minority. And I always talk about mental health problems coming in a range, right? Like sizes of clothes, small, medium, large. And on the large and severe segment here, this is what the society believes mental health is. They don't understand that there's some kind of medium segment or small segment that each and every one of us, a larger population, would face once or twice in our life.
There's so many things that I want to point out. the one thing that stood out to me is you've mentioned the issue of purpose. How important is that area, personal purpose?
Well, it's huge. I mean, I think all of us once or twice in our lives have sat down and really thought, like, what is life about? You know, many times we're excited in high school with my fellow friends, and we'll be like, we're going to graduate, get into uni, get a good job and money. And then I sat down and thought about it. Okay, it really looks like it's this path that's already outlined for me. Get a job, marry, have children, grow old, buy a farm, and die. It's like, really, is that all there is to life? Really? And so sometimes that struggle of purpose and where to find it and what that could be kind of sends some people into a pursuit for it, but for others it causes them into a state of despair where they feel like, what's the point of living really if it's all outlined?
Like when you mentioned the issue of purpose, I think it's very important. And what I've noticed is that not so many people talk about purpose. There's this cycle that has been created by society. And I think this also attaches to the next question that I have for you. As a therapist, how do you feel about how men's mental health issues are perceived in Zambia and globally?
The general idea about men's mental health is that the whole world wants men to thrive. The whole world wants men to get help. The whole world wants men to get support, right? That's a general mindset. But when you really come to the realities of what is on the ground in the day-to-day lifestyle, men have such high expectations on them.
Yeah.
Right? Like we want them to get help so that they can get back to really being what we expect them to be. Strong, immovable, always getting things done, always a shoulder to lean on. And so that is part and parcel of the problem, that expectation. And not to say this expectation is wrong. I mean, men are built to be strong. Men are built to carry. Men are built to support. It's in our DNA. It's what we love to do. But sometimes this comfort, this support is not always given when the chips are down, when the man is not, really, as we talked about dysfunction in that definition, is not living up to expectation. And beyond men, I mean, just all around, we live in a very high critical and judgmental society of where we have a standard of perfection, but yet no one can meet it. But as far as those that are exposed in falling short, we point the finger, we laugh, we use them as examples. And yet most of us just haven't been exposed yet. And so given the very fact that humans have high standards and can be high and critical on one another, given the role of a man and expectation of what society has of a man, whenever they fall short, it tends to be difficult. So in the general scheme of things, people are compassionate and they really want men to be supported, but they want them to be supported so that they get back to really being men.
And you've actually raised something that's created like a light bulb moment for me. I've understood the part where men want to be like, we want men to be well and to be capable, but I've never thought about it in the sense that we want them to be well so they can just get back into being men. And I think that also just doesn't leave enough room for them to just be as they are in their true self, whether it's someone who's soft, tender, like the expectation of the same way that you've put it, that there's this expectation that has been brought out, that has been created by society from time and time again. And I think those the picture of perfection changes with even generations, because there's different things that are affecting our generation now that didn't affect people from a certain generation before us. And that's great to learn that. And I appreciate the analogy you also gave of the sizes, because also that kind of connects to, I'm just thinking right now, we also kind of box from a tender age, we have these views of how we feel a man should grow up. Even before someone becomes a man, we've already created a picture in which they need to fit in, which there's a lot of work that we need to do. I understand as Thrive, you engage in a lot of community outreach programs. I wanted to understand, are the men in these communities receptive of your approach, and what are the ratios of attendance or presence between men and women?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I think where there is a larger group of a population getting some kind of service related to mental health, the women always outweigh the men, right?
Okay.
It's a public circle. Everyone is seeing who's going in for the help, who's not going in for the help. And we see men thrive more in one-on-one settings, and it's kind of growing to come together in more group settings that are maybe only men focused.
Okay.
But in a general public awareness outreach in a community like Misisi, like Mutendere,
Yeah.
you see more women who are unapologetically in front to air out, to listen, to get information. And the men they're around, just not right there in your face. They're around, just
Okay. Okay.
hearing, listening. And this ties into a statistic that, women and men with the very same kind of mental health problem will see that women are more likely to get help and men are less likely to get help. If you and I were both struggling with depression today, statistics show you would reach out for help before I would ever consider doing that. And it ties back into this society expectation that we're going into in what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman. It kind of feels like women have a pass to say, be weak, be vulnerable, and go out and get help, while men are like, figure it out, toughen up, figure it out, right?
Somewhere.
And so that's somewhere, and that's kind of the problem. This what the roles, expectations are in our communities and societies are, and so that's what we see on the ground as far as a public setting is concerned. But given a more confidential, private arrangement, we are seeing a growing trend in at least men coming to the fore in group settings or in one-on-one to kind of get some support. And I think a lot of what we are seeing today in the scary statistics of the rise in suicidal attempts and suicidal completions is kind of triggering something in men's minds and just general public to say, hey, I better get help before I do something to myself or things get worse, And it's the beauty of a modernizing world, technology happening and us being informed about things going on around us. And so it's opening us up to reach out for support and help. And it's interesting, you talked about generations when it comes to men, right? Like being a man 50 years ago isn't the same as being a man now. You have the same gender, you have all the same equipment of a man, but with a modernized, technologically advanced world. Anyway, I guess location also matters if you're in an urban setup, if you're in a rural setup, and what's right presenting before you in what you can do as a man. And to be honest, in a society where women are so advancing now, right? It seemed like men could be the only source of provision in a family. But now how the story is changing, right? It would often be sad. The woman loses her husband. Now she has to come to the fore. But yet we're seeing in today's society, the man is completely fine in his right sense of mind. Woman is there as well. She's thriving more. She's the one who's the breadwinner, right? Maybe the man is making less. Maybe the man is making more, but his state of mind isn't the same. Or even if the man is making more as well, the woman can still stand on her own. So this high dependency for men is slowly reducing. I mean, beyond the woman versus man battle we love to have, children now are coming to the fore like never before, like we've seen in the past. I mean, 15-year-olds, 20-year-olds can live by themselves, can earn money, can figure out how to do things on the internet. We have socialites and YouTube people trending. I mean, there's so many possibilities now. And so slowly but surely, the one source of provision, which was this man, is now the dependence on him is reducing through the women, is reducing through the children. And so it comes to question, what is the role of a man in today's society now?
That's a good point. And I would like to ask a question on that, because the thing you've mentioned is the same thing, the generational picture of a man kind of has changed, and just society itself. But do you feel that this man versus woman has been approached a different way, just like a personal view? If a man is a man, they are a man, like regardless of whatever it is the situation is. So I actually thought I would be in a generation that is more acceptable of women being supportive with the men so that there's less pressure being attached to the men. I don't think it has worked out the way society envisioned it to be, just like generally.
Well,
And also coming down like to the issues of mental health. The way
yeah.
people have been talking about opening up, it kind of feels like that's the one thing that has been taken from generation to generation on how a man should be perceived. So many things around have changed, but that one thing seems to be very consistent. And I don't know if that also is the cause for like questioning what is the role of a man, because one thing has remained constant and everything else around is changing, which I feel it should have
Mm.
also built into a new version of how human beings should coexist.
Mm.
Yeah.
I hear you. I think there's a lot of debate about this for sure. And to me, what I really think, it's been a power struggle, right?
Yeah.
When you talk about men versus women, it kind of feels the authority that the society and community has given a man to rule, to lead, with many cases of it being done well and it not being done well at all, with not the ideal model. We're coming up with a generation that has a lot of wounds in this authority area and what authority looks like. It kind of feels like, because as a man, you're the breadwinner, the provider, you can kind of get away with being rude, with being violent, with being inconsiderate.
Mm.
And so there's been this longing for a time where, okay, now that we're seeing women thriving in their own space, being able to provide, in some cases, even better than men, this kind of, it's a moment where it's my time. It's a moment where, okay, now because I have the authority, I can do this. I can do what you used to do to us.
Ooh,
And so
okay.
there's this tension over that, because there's hurt behind it. And
Yeah.
to be honest, the ideal model was never this kind of dictatorish kind of leading, but
Yeah.
it's always been partnership. It's always been collaboration for the greater good of our family, for the greater good of the society. The man leads in saying, I think we're doing this. My woman, what do you think we should do? And she brings in her input. And that collective idea, that brainstorming, is what leads to a productive community, family, society. But with a lot of wounded people in living in spaces where their ideal has not been their story, these wounds have led into wars between genders. And it's a sad reality of the fallen world that we live in trying to
Yeah.
now rectify all this confusion together, and everyone having an opinion, and social media being a platform where you can just splurge everything out. And now you have feminists, and now you have men that want to be dictators, and it's just a whole mess going on. But in that mess, there still needs to be this beacon of hope and light preached to say, we all want to work together for the greater good of our livelihood. I mean, we all want to eat, we all want happiness, we all want peace, we all want our children to be in the right state of mind, right? And now, if we all want this thing, we can work together to achieve that. But it kind of feels like, okay, we want to work together, but who's going to drive? We want to work together, but whose name is going to be on the title deed? And who's this and this? The little nitty-gritties are still getting in the way to that. And so the impact on mental health is this umbrella of who should be and who shouldn't be. There's this constant struggle between who I am now and who society says I should be versus who I actually want to be. And so we're struggling within these different spaces. One moment I feel this is who I really want to be, but society says this is not who I'm supposed to be. And so you try and jump into what society wants you to be. And then you struggle with, society wants me to be this, but I don't feel I'm being true to myself. So there's this constant battle between, they call it the ideal self versus the real self versus society's self, basically. There's always this gap in between. And so part of that goes back now into purpose, right?
I was about to say the same thing.
There you go. Am I called to be
You
a
read
man
my mind.
that society wants me to be? And would that make me feel? Or am
Yeah.
I called to be a man who my family wants me to be? And is that where I find fulfillment? And sometimes we see that someone has pursued it in a way that this is what my family's expectation has been of me. They get halfway through the road or to the end of the road and they feel, you know what? I never really wanted.
And I love how you've brought out like the family dynamics. Now makes me want to ask a question. In your professional settings, sure you've also experienced like situations where families come and they want therapy. What is the best approach? Because I know not everyone can manage to go for therapy as a family group. But what are the things that can be included in our homes where we can begin to bring in those small steps that can help us nurture both the young boys and the young girls, to the adults, to the as a collective. What kind of things do you feel we need to learn as a community?
I think beyond any kind of therapy in itself, individual, group, family, before we can ever get that really going, people need to be aware about what mental health truly is and its impact on not just ourselves, but those around us.
Okay.
Now, this is unfortunately a space that there's minimal knowledge around, and there's still heavy stigma around.
Yeah.
So people hear mental health in the home and like, no one's crazy in here. We're not going to talk about that, because it's usually attached to this, remember, that large, severe group, right? But yet we all once or twice in our life, we will experience some kind of mental health challenge because of life events we go through that it can happen to anyone, or just the way we think about life. And so spreading awareness on the importance of what mental health is, how we can grow and learn from it. It teaches us a beautiful thing that's needed in a family setting, which is compassion, right? Which is sympathy for one another. You know, just because I grew up in a very hard life doesn't mean I should inflict that on someone else, right? Just because I was abused or I was taken for granted, now the opposite is true. Doesn't mean I should now overcompensate for my children to never feel that ever in their lives. Balance is so important, because there's things that's in the control of the family as we are nurturing one another, and there are some things that are not in their control at all. Some things that are individualistic, an individual has to make a decision, an effective decision. So beyond teaching all of this, people need to be aware about the importance of mental health and how it can impact their lifespan. I mean, education is something our family and society does not compromise on, right? Because they have seen the value and the power of what it provides. Yet we're still growing to see what the power and value of good mental health can provide for an individual. We often just think, things just go off the rail when someone is 40 or in this moment in their life. We don't backtrack. We don't, the way we look at, because someone didn't finish school, they're struggling with work and getting by in life. Why don't we look at the same as, struggles with drug addiction, struggles with depression, struggles with suicide, maybe have stemmed from something that happened in the past, and how can we rectify that today? And so as we spread awareness about the power of having the right knowledge about what mental health is, and trying to connect our loved one, connect our societies to the right professionals to give these services, we are most likely to see an improvement even at family level. But before all of that, awareness has to be shared.
Awareness. And I'm glad that you've mentioned the issue of awareness, because from my personal experiences, most of these things come from a point of ignorance and misconception, which actually draws me to my last question for you. To a man or young boy that will listen to this conversation, what advice can you give them? And what misconception would you like them to let go of?
Well, I think key advice would be like, not everyone's life is as perfect as you may think it is. And your life isn't the worst life in the world, right? Misconceptions around that would be, you feel, one, you're the only one who's where you are at right now, or who has ever gone through what you're going through. Oh my goodness, you'll be so surprised how many people possibly that you look up to, many people that you feel are well-to-do, have been in your very shoes. The Bible talks about there is nothing new under the sun. Seems to be a cycle of everyone kind of will have a taste of the same experiences or the same kinds of stories, just keep on revolving around people's lives over and over and over. And your situation could be definitely something that someone has gone through before. And someone like a professional has experienced working with and dealing with. And so there are solutions to every problem, including yours. Nothing is unsolvable, right? And so reaching out to get the help that you need to find solutions is the best thing, because sometimes within ourselves, we may not have the capacity to find the solutions. We may feel limited. We can only think so far. That's why they say 2 heads are better than one. Another head may give you ideas that you never ever thought of. And so reaching out in spaces where you feel I'm the only one, there is no solution to this, is really powerful in how it can open up doors and solutions that you never thought were possible.
Wow. No, thank you so much, David. And this has been eye-opening for me. I have picked a few things that before sitting here to chat with you, I didn't think of to that extent. So thank you so much for the information and just being very available to have this conversation with me.
No problem. It's always a pleasure to work with you, Alice.
Thank you so much and have a great, great day ahead.
Okay, you too. Thank you so much.
All right, bye.
If you loved this conversation, do let me know. Thank you so much for listening in and for watching. Until next time on the We Care Virtue Talk with Alice.